Alright, here it is, right into the tunnel for this one, Old Company Lake High for the 1855 to 1931. And here's the yellow train over here, has been already arriving. And then we got to make sure to go in here and see where we're going to fit in.
I'm sure he's avoiding shame. Now, 1931 on the other hand, that is a year major upgrades were begun at the mine to modernize it, the construction methods available during that time. That is when they, of course, built the modern concrete portal that you're looking at. Inside the mine, as we go through, you're going to be seeing some other areas of concrete work, some additional steel work, all put in as part of this upgrade going on during the 1930s. Now, it was also during this time you did see the widespread use of electricity coming underground into the mines. Previous to the 1920s, larger pieces of equipment like hoisting engines and pumps, these things were mainly steam-driven. There was a steam plant or boiler plant out here on the surface. Live steam was then piped into our mine for these larger pieces of equipment. Now, the mine did end up closing in June of 1972. It holds a record that still stands to this day. This mine was the longest continuously operated anthracite coal mine in the world. No other coal mine, at least for anthracite coal, ran longer than ours, something we're very proud of. We are also one of the oldest, if not the oldest, tourable coal mines in the United States at 164. So folks, I will be collecting your tickets if you do have them. We do have the 2 cars here. Please watch your heads as you load though, folks.
You have 8 people. Okay.
Yep, there we go. Yep, thank you. Watch your heads getting in, folks.
Here we go.
Alright,
Let's
let's go into here. I'm
Or
going
if you were Scott's
to
group,
really carefully.
if you were Scott Herring's group, you would
Here we are here.
watch your heads, folks.
the train.
Wow, we are in the train.
Ouch, Kyle. I tried to watch my
Right next
head.
to you.
Alright,
Oh, Michael, this stuff ceiling is low.
He said it was low, okay?
Yeah, I understand. I know, but I don't want to bump my head.
Okay, just be careful then.
Okay.
great to have.
No.
Let's do it.
So how's it feel, guys?
Chilly.
Really chilly?
Good. Yeah, chilly actually.
And there's still some room here, people.
Yes, chilly.
There's still some room here, people. Sorry. I know. Never mind.
Thank you.
Yep, we got more.
Watch your heads, though, folks.
See husband and wife. It's lit.
Oh, hang on.
How you doing, man?
Here it is.
You look like you just like
Mike.
a little, like you like
Oh,
fun when I'm cut trees.
right behind.
No,
All right.
no.
I thought like I know people, with the what's it called the thing?
Alright, while we on here, and let's get to right.
Yeah.
Guys, we're not gonna bump you here. It's gonna
You can
be.
sit here if you want. Okay. I'll try. It's fine. Here.
Okay.
Okay. You're not.
Alright, Zack, the tour guy, almost ready.
Is he gonna turn it on?
Yeah, you want to turn it on.
No, you're gonna
All right,
put
folks, little bump as we get started.
Alright.
Stand up.
Here we go. Yeah, it was cool, Andrew.
This is Michael Letman saying we will continue on with the tour. In the meantime, that's all.
And oh yeah, Zack the toy man is here to ride.
All right, folks. Folks, as I let you all out, I want you to, of course, mind your heads. You are going to be making a right-hand turn coming out of the door. And you're going to gather up at the end of the platform over to your left.
Oh boy.
Your right coming out, watch your head and your step.
That's to the left.
And here again, watch your heads and your steps, folks. It takes it out here to your right.
Right, like step away.
Middle of nowhere. We're in the middle of nowhere.
Correct.
I don't know if I can get off here.
Watch your head, watch your head.
Alright, so we're gonna go last.
And you're going to gather up just over here across from me, folks. But they're going to just
Oh,
find yourself.
coming right with you,
out.
Zack.
How are we finish, Kyle?
Here in northeastern Pennsylvania. Now, historically, for many years, one of anthracite coal's uses was as a domestic fuel for home heating. The other type of coal that's out there, bituminous, we call that soft coal. That, on the other hand, you can find in 38 states throughout the United States, including western Pennsylvania and also all throughout the world. Where you mainly found anthracite in the home setting, bituminous coal for the most part is an industrial fuel. That is what you find burned to produce electricity. It is also used in the steel manufacturing process. Now, where we are standing right now is 1,600 feet inside the mountain. We have just traveled over a quarter of a mile. We are at about 190 feet in depth right now, but we have actually gone uphill just about 8 feet since we left the platform outside. This tunnel, or drift, was driven in on a slight uphill angle. This is for two major reasons. A little over 100 years ago, mules were used in the mines to move the coal cars around. The coal company realized it was simply easier for the mules to haul the heavy loaded cars out downhill slightly and empties uphill to return into the mine. But more importantly, if you do notice around us all the dripping groundwater, water is a big problem in our mines. Active mines pump water 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to keep up with the inflow. The larger the mine you had, the more water you end up having to deal with. Here at this mine, rather than pumping all of this water directly to the surface through large pipes, the company again realized that gravity could help. The water from the lower levels only had to be pumped to this level, level 1. Gravity then took it out in a ditch in the tunnel that we drove through. So saved the company a little bit of money. Now, this area where we're all standing, this is known as a passing branch or a siding. Folks, where all of you are standing, at your feet is another set of tracks. It's pretty well covered up by the rock today, in addition to the main set that we drove in on. This was a staging area. This is where they brought the loaded coal cars. They assembled them into long chains, just making them ready to take outside to the coal breaker for processing. Now, folks, throughout our tour, I do encourage you all to ask questions. The tour is over 250 years of history in an hour. I am a miner myself. I'm here to represent the industry the best way I can, the way we are, of course, doing it today, and the way our guys were doing this over 150 years ago. So, with all that in mind, folks, we are starting on up the tunnel this way.
So what's with the wagon right into the rope, tighten it?
Well, we're going to be talking about that here in just a minute. Now, this is one of our unique pieces of equipment we use underground. It is known as a Go Devil. Folks, it's the four-wheeled cart, of course, sitting there in the center of the floor. That was originally running on a narrower set of tracks inside the main set out here on the tunnel floor. Through a system of cables and pulleys, it was used to move those heavy loaded cars as they were coming off of the shaft just up ahead of us. It took them up into that staging area where we just started so they could form the strings of cars to take outside. Now, like I did touch on out of the platform a little bit, larger pieces of equipment like the pumps that would have been constantly removing the water, hoisting equipment like this small dual drum hoist here at the back. Steam was the main mode of power for many years. It wasn't until you got into the 19-teens and 1920s. That's when you really started to see equipment like this being electrified. Folks, we're going to be heading on up again. And folks, as you're making your way up, you can gather anywhere you like out here along the fence. Plenty of room out here, folks.
So which way on this cage is right for it?
All right, folks, as again you are making your way on up, what you're looking at ahead of us here is something we are very proud of at number 9. This is, of course, our shaft. We do have the only one you can see here in the anthracite region today, at least on a tour mine. All others have been capped, filled in, or lost to time and progress. Now, this is what we consider a two-compartment shaft, because folks, as you do see, we have two independently operable elevator cages. If we could follow those heavy steel cables above each cage back to the surface, 190 feet above us, you would get to see a large steel structure known as a head frame. On the top of the head frame are two large pulley wheels or ship wheels. Those cables pass up the shaft through the head frame to the surface, over these ship wheels, and then down the mountain a bit to a large hoisting engine in a brick building. That's where you would have found the hoist engineer or operator stationed for his 8-hour day. He is the one in control of these two cages. Now, the way the hoist operator knows where the cages are in relation to the different levels of our mine, if any of you folks who've been in an older building and you've noticed on top of the elevator doors the old-fashioned needle that would move to show what floor you're on, his hoist does have a very similar setup. But his dial is round. It looks more like a clock face with two hands, one hand for each of the two cages. The way the operator would know whether to start, stop, go up, down, faster, slower, that is through a series of signals. Years ago, steam whistles, they were the common thing. But today, of course, we are using electric bells or buzzers. It is one bell to stop, two to go down, three to come up, things like that. Now, folks, if you do look at the two cages themselves, you notice that each one does have a heavy steel roof. That roof is known as a bonnet. It is there as a protection for you as a miner riding between the different levels. It is not uncommon over the years. Pieces of wood or rock may come loose, far up in the shaft, fall down. That piece of steel is there to protect you. But if you notice underneath each bonnet, folks, we do have handles hanging in our two cages.
Right on top?
They are there, of course, for you to hold on to as you are riding to your place of work. Now, these particular cages, these do not have a gator door to keep you from falling off. It is simply the floor you are standing on and the handle you're holding on to then ride to your place of work. Now, construction began on this shaft in May of 1900. It would eventually reach a depth of nearly 900 feet. Our mine did originally have 4 levels. We're, of course, on the first level here. The levels are offset nearly 200 feet from each other. Level 2 is 200 feet below us, 3 is 200 feet below that, and 4 is 200 below that at the very bottom. The last time either of these two cages were used was in February of 1960. They've been parked right here ever since. From that time up until June of 1972 when the mine actually closed, they were only mining the coal left easy to get here on our first level. At that time, they had no need to go any deeper. Now, on that same line of thinking, we also have not pumped a drop of water in this mine in many decades. We haven't needed to. It is also very costly to continually pump groundwater out. We have allowed the water to fill in the lower levels of this mine to its natural drainage level. Think of it as the level where the water will not rise or fall too dramatically on its own. That level today is nearly 250 feet below from where we're standing right now. So it means our third and fourth levels, they are completely flooded with water today. Only the second level is still dry and accessible. Now, folks, if you notice around the shaft, we do have some little rooms here. One is a little farther up there on our left. We're going to see that one closer in just a minute. One is over here to our right. For the most part, the rooms in here are maintenance shops. All maintenance was performed underground in the mine if it was all possible. Simply easier for the coal company to repair broken equipment in here rather than carting it over a quarter mile back outside to a surface shop. For instance, the room up there on the left, that was at one time an electrician's shop. Now, every level of our mine also did have its own section mine foreman, the guy in charge of keeping order amongst this level. Level 1, or Section 1's office, that's the room over here to our right. Now, you will only find a mine foreman, though, in there for a very short time. He's not going to just sit back at the desk all day. The foreman is going to be in the office at the beginning of your shift, checking the miners in as they're arriving for their day. Once everyone has arrived that is really going to arrive for the shift, the foreman will leave that office, and he's going to start walking throughout all the working areas here in this section, so all of level 1. He is checking in on things like production, just making sure things are moving smoothly during the shift. He is looking for any obvious hazards for the miners. We're talking about things now like bad roof, falls of rock, accumulations of gas, anything that can pose a danger. When he arrives back here at the shaft, the foreman is going to want to see loaded cars coming up fairly regularly from our lower levels and empties going down regularly to replace them. It would be only at the end of the shift. That's when you'll find him in that office again to check everyone out as they leave. Now, if a miner was unaccounted for at the end of the shift, it is up to that mine foreman to go back through this level and make sure that man was found. An accident may have occurred sometime during the shift. Now, folks, if you do notice, up on top of the door frame there, we did put a little thermometer for you all. It is between 49 and 53 degrees here in our mine. It maintains this temperature year-round, regardless of what it is doing at the surface. Now, we have a few nice things about our mines. Climate is always constant down here. It could be a hot 90-degree day in the middle of summer, and it will still be 50 down here. The other end of it, though, 5 degrees in January. It is also still nearly close to 50. So this isn't too bad of a temperature to work in, let alone, of course, the physical labor you will be doing throughout your shift. Now, folks, in a moment we are going to be moving up this walkway here behind me. You will get to look down the shaft. Something neat to see, you should be able to see the water nearly 250 feet below us. You're going to be looking straight down 25 stories. Just something to think about. Now, as you look down, keep in the back of your mind, roughly 50 feet above that water or 200 feet below from where you're standing is near where the second level is, the only other dry level. The only thing I ask folks, when you are looking down, if you do have anything loose with you, make sure you're holding on to it, folks, otherwise it is gone. Right up this way, folks.
All right, let's follow it and see what they got to go.
Before you look down, folks, as you come up, you may need to lean over a little bit towards the orange ribbon we have there in the back, but you should be able to see that water 250 feet below us.
All right, so we gotta see the water, how you gotta flood it over here. I'm gonna give you just a closer look.
Then we're gonna gather up here, folks, but take your time, have a look around. If you have questions, you're more than welcome to ask.
You can see it's really foggy down here.
Make the shot.
So they stopped using this when they just stopped mining down there?
At that level, yes. No, they just stopped using it. Yes.
No need, so.
That's why you did, yeah. Now, when our mine was in full operation, there were nearly 1,200 of these 8-ton cars on this property alone. There were upwards of 5,000 of them scattered throughout this valley. This is production on a large scale. Folks, if any of you were to have visited this mine in the early 1950s, you would have found nearly 270 men underground in this mine doing all these various jobs. 2 10-hour shifts a day, 6 days a week. And this was a mid-size operation. We did have mines far larger than this one as well as smaller. Folks, we're going to drift over this way. Now we're going to look at some tools that we as miners are using every day in the chamber. Places where we are physically mining the coal itself. Just kind of filling around me here as best you can, folks. Now, again, folks, as you do drift your way over, what I'm leaning against here is one of the mainstay tools we use underground in our mines of today. This is known as a jack-leg drill. This drill weighs about 85 pounds, so it's not necessarily something you want to pick up, carry on your shoulder all day, but it runs on compressed air. Most of our handheld equipment in today's mines is compressed air powered. This is safer to work with down here given the wet environment over electric tools. Inside of the leg, we do have an air-powered ram that's going to help you push the drill forward against the face of rock, coal, whatever we are drilling at the time. Bits in the end can range from 3 feet to 12 feet long, just depending on what we are trying to do. Now, like I did say before, this is modern equipment. We have had drills of this style in our mines for nearly a century now. Ones made in the mid-1920s look very similar to ones we use today. This is a reliable design, so figure if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, if you were to go back into the 1800s, however, that was the era of hand-powered tools. That was all miners had available for many, many years. If you were a miner working in the coal, you'd be using something known as a chest drill or a brace drill. That had a U-shaped steel bracket in the front of it that you'd lean against to use your weight to push the bit forward against the face of coal you want to drill. A laborer working with you will stand in front of you and help you crank the drill as you then pushed ahead. That's how you'd advance into coal years ago. Now, if you were working in hard rock, like where we're standing now, for instance, things became a little more difficult. You would then be using something known as a jumper steel. The jumper steel, that was nothing more than a 6 to 8 foot long steel bar with a hardened tip. You as the miner hold that up over your shoulder and you're slowly rotating the bar in your hands. As you are, of course, pushing it against the face of rock you wanted to drill. But as you do that, your laborer, he is now behind you, striking the bar with a sledgehammer. That's how you proceed forward in the rock years ago. Now, folks, you had to trust your laborers as well. For the first 125 years of anthracite mining, hard hats were not invented yet. Miners were only provided with a soft canvas cap. The cap was not there to protect your head at all. That was simply to hold onto your light. We're going to see one here in just a little bit. Folks, right on up this way, please.
So, what kind of gate is that?
What's what?
This gate.
Just to keep people from going down there.
Right.
Fuel. What? Fuel. Okay.
All right, folks, again, as you are drifting your way up this way, we're going to be talking about here again other ways we can move between the mines. The cages at the shaft are, of course, not your only way. It is actually illegal for mines to have only one way in and one way out. One of our many we call traveling ways underground. That's what we're looking at right here behind me. Now, folks, this one is known as the Mule Way. It is named that because, again, 100 years ago when mules were still used regularly in the mines, they would physically walk them up and down between the different levels of the mine. They didn't normally put them on those two cages for a ride. Now, this boils down to profit and production. These are the two big things the coal company was most concerned with years ago. Oftentimes, safety took a backseat in the mines in order to increase production, making the mines a very dangerous place. For instance, during a shift, the coal company didn't want to spare one empty cage at the shaft to move a mule between the levels when that could be holding a fully loaded car. That was a waste of time and money in the company's eyes. Now, the Mule Way here goes out for a distance of 150 feet at nearly a 40-degree angle. This is fairly steep. There are wide steps as you're making your way down. At the bottom is a small landing where it makes a U-turn back towards us for another 150 feet at a 40-degree angle until you meet up with the second level, nearly 200 feet below us. There is, of course, another Mule Way down to the third level, another one to the fourth level as well. Now, the nice thing about passages like the Mule Way, say we did have an accident here in the mine. It prevented a group of miners from getting to that shaft. Maybe the shaft itself had become damaged in some way, a fire, an explosion. Men working on the lower levels could find their way to passages like this, then walk themselves up and out to safety. Now, folks, the Mule Way here was also mined out through, it was once a solid vein of coal. This is the first vein we get to see a lot of on our tour. This one is known as the Holmes vein. As you can see from this opening behind me and the opening across from us, same thing. It is only around 4 feet thick through here. It is a fairly thin vein. But it starts, like all of the other coal veins in this valley, 190 feet up above us, on the surface, on the edge of the valley, in a place called the outcrop. That's where you could find the vein, on the surface if you dug the dirt away. The coal vein dives down, it goes past us nearly 2,000 feet to the lowest underground level of the valley, or we consider the basin, before it starts to slowly swing back up, heading up the other side of the valley till it meets another outcrop. The Panther Valley, where we are, is fairly narrow. It is only around 2 to 3 miles wide at the widest point. You can, of course, find the Holmes vein on either of these two sides. But this vein is just over 60 miles long. It starts east of here, outside of the town of Jim Thorpe, and it runs into west of here in northern Dauphin County, above the city of Harrisburg. This is a lot of material, and this is only one of 7 mineable veins of coal in this valley. All of the veins here are over 60 miles long. Now, the Holmes vein, again, is one of our thinner veins at around 4 feet thick. The thickest vein, on the other hand, in this valley is known as the Mammoth vein. In certain pockets, the Mammoth vein approaches 100 feet thick. That is why we have been able to mine coal in this area for over 200 years, and why we are still able to mine the coal here today. Folks, if I could just drift over here to the front. Folks, I'm sure you're not thinking about much in today's world. Children working in and around the mines. This was a very common theme a little over 100 years ago. This was not out of the ordinary in the least. You would have started your life as a young boy growing up in coal country, we're going to say in the 1880s, between the ages of 6 and 10. You would have been on the surface in a building known as the coal breaker. Your job would have been breaker boy. What you would have been doing is, as that material was taken out of the mine, it was taken outside up into the coal breaker and crushed down to a smaller, more manageable size. That smaller material went down long wooden chutes in the coal breaker that breaker boys sat on top of. Their whole job was, as the material was going down between their legs, they were there to pick out slate, rock, bits of metal, bits of wood to clean the coal. We call that process hand-picking the coal. Now, of course, in later years, breaker boys were replaced by machinery that does that exact same job. But for nearly the first 130 years of anthracite mining, it was not uncommon to see young boys, sometimes as young as 6 and 7, especially in those very early years, up on the surface in the coal breakers. That would have been your first job, your introduction to the anthracite mining industry. Now, once you got a little bit older, maybe you are in your early teens now, 13, 14, 15 years of age. That is a little old to be in the breaker still. Chances are the coal company will now be offering you a job underground here in the mine itself. You could be given one of a handful of jobs. One of the more common ones, though, for the younger generation is what our friend here is up to. His job is mule driver. His simple job is to guide the mule throughout the mine with a loaded or an empty car. That's all he has to do for his 10-hour shift. This is a fairly simple job, but this is very important. As soon as that mine car was filled beneath the miner's chamber, he better be there to take that car away. As soon as the car was taken away, another driver better be there with a fresh empty car ready to be refilled. Because again, with production being the name of the game, there is always this incentive to work quickly down here. Folks, if you do notice up on his head, that is the soft canvas cap I was talking about a little bit ago. The light that he is using is the earliest form of lighting given to our miners. This is the open flame wick lamp. When the light is lit, up there on the top, it would have a 2 to 3 inch yellow flame burning throughout your day. That will be giving you a dim pool of light. That is all the light that you have to perform your job. The rest of this mine is total darkness. Now, miners working in the chambers with their labor do have 2 of these lights bobbing around. That is a little brighter, but we are still talking very dim lighting conditions. But there is a huge problem. Working underground in our mines with what we call a naked light or an open light. These are gases. Gases are ever present in the mines. They are naturally occurring. We more or less just have to deal with them whichever mine we're in. Even today, the 2 big ones that we're on the lookout for are known as black damp and fire damp. Black damp is largely carbon dioxide. This is odorless, colorless, and heavier than air. It's going to gather up down near the floor. If that built up in a large amount in the chamber, a miner could die of suffocation. That removed the oxygen from your chamber and you could no longer breathe. The other type of gas, fire damp, is methane. Methane in the mines is also odorless and colorless, but that is lighter than air. That's going to be up at our roof. In low concentrations, it is highly flammable. In high concentrations, it is highly explosive. This is not something you want to happen upon with that open flame light. Now, folks, in the 18 teens and 1820s, canaries were used underground a few of our mines to detect gas. That was the purpose of the canary in the coal mines years ago. Miners figured with the canary's small lungs, they could detect any amount of gas in the area before a fully grown man working could. That is very true. If the canary stopped singing, miners knew gases were in that chamber and they had to clear that area quickly. But that did not tell you what type of gas you were dealing with or really how much there was. That's still a huge problem. It wasn't until around 1840 when a man in England invented a device that would finally reliably tell us what we're dealing with in the mines every day. His name was Sir Humphrey Davy, and his invention bears his name and is known as the Davy lamp. Davy's original was nothing more than a small flame enclosed in a set of fine steel screens. Davy reasoned the screens cooled the flame before it was allowed to escape into the air around him. His lamp, placed into methane, would not burn and would not explode, but that would allow you to detect the presence of the gas, and that saved many miners' lives. The modern version of Davy's invention is what I always carry with me. Today, this is known as a flame safety lamp. This particular design is unchanged for 120 years. It is very reliable. The way we use this, we take it into the chamber first thing in the morning. Perhaps the fan at the mine was off the previous night. Maybe the air in the chamber is stagnant. There's no breeze, no movement going through. Black damp may have settled in there. We're going to take our lamp into the chamber, and we're going to dip it down near the floor in the lowest area for a few seconds.
So how
when we bring the lamp back up, we now happen to notice that the flame inside has shrank. It is a deep blue color. Perhaps it has gone out. We know that there's black damp in the chamber. The flame is going down or going out from a low level of oxygen. If we were to take it into the chamber now after a blast, after the dust has settled, that's when we're looking for methane, fire damp. We're going to take the lamp near our freshly blasted face of coal, moving this slowly across the face, and now putting it up into the roof, the highest area we can get it into. And when we bring the lamp back down, if now we notice the flame has grown, it is much taller. Maybe it has a bit of an orangish red color to it. You know that there is methane or fire damp in the chamber. This is, of course, reacting to a highly flammable gas. Now, if we did find any gas in the chamber, we are, of course, going to be leaving the chamber, going back down to the gangway or the tunnel below us, and setting up what is known as brattice. It is nothing more than that tart material you can see just beyond the mine car. We are going to be setting that up like an air curtain. The whole idea is to direct as much of the fresh air as possible into the chamber to push the gas away. Getting it to where the mine fan was located, the fan will then take it out of the mine for us, so clearing the air. We do the same thing for large clouds of dust. Ventilation is, of course, very important in our mines. Any questions here, folks? I know it was a little bit of a long run there.
What are you lighting the candle into the lantern?
What are we lighting it with?
The candle that you hold it into the lantern.
It's not a candle. It has a little wick inside that it lights.
A wick inside?
Yes. Any questions?
Once we climb the ladder over here, I'm not sure what it called for. About the homeless ring, homeless ring. And you know, and just like you can blast it over here, and then you want to be careful there, all right? And then Zack will tell you about the laddering, you know, just climb upstairs now, all the way up here. And what about this wall? And it feels like dirt over here. You can feel that, like it's kind of dirty over here on this wall. Then you just want to just puddling over.
Last one it does. It's great.
Just keep it steady to follow with Zack, the tour guide. And then just carefully with the water dripping over the ceiling. And oh, he's almost there.
Folks, as you're making your way down the tunnel, I want you to gather up down here on the stone out in front of the building.
Where's the stone?
Just right down in here, folks, out on the ground.
All the way?
In front of the building.
Is it all the way through here, just straight ahead?
Now there again, folks, as you are filling on in, what we're going to be talking about here for a moment is, again, I'm sure something you are not thinking about when you think about the mining industry in general today. Healthcare. Healthcare around the mines. Now, folks, before I talk about the little room here behind me, we're going to talk about the mines in this area in the 1800s. We will start there. Now, folks, if any of you are a miner here, and we're going to say 1870, you are up in that chamber we were just looking at a little bit ago. You're going through the motions of your day, so putting coal out, putting timber in. Maybe you are 2 or 3 hours into your shift and you get hurt. Okay, maybe you have fallen. You have cut your hand pretty severely. Maybe you have broken your leg. You're banged up pretty good. Your laborer working with you is going to perhaps tear a piece of your shirt off to bandage your wound as best he could. He's going to be offering you some water from your canteen. If it's handy, he is going to be taking you and placing you down near the foot of the chamber, the safest area he could put you, but that is unfortunately where you will be spending the remainder of your shift.
So
Coal companies in the 1800s were under no circumstances going to send a mine car out just to take you out because you were injured. Production of the coal was far more important. Miners during the 19th century, they were thought of more or less as a commodity by these large coal companies, easily replaceable if one was killed or crippled in an accident. These were hard times if you were a miner. That's the easiest way I can describe that time period. Now, we're going to move forward in history a little bit. We are going to come up to January of 1890. That is when the United Mine Workers of America was founded, the UMW of A, the Miners Union. Through a series of sit-downs, strikes, and work stoppages in the 1890s. That was a very violent decade. By 1900, the union is now starting to have a little more sway with the larger coal companies. And their demands were fairly simple, even by today's standards. They were after 3 big things. They wanted better working conditions for the men, a standardized working day, and better wages. That they would be using to keep
right
that
up
circuit
here.
of air going to keep the gas and dust away from our working faces.
it's hard to go
Now,
up here,
the
right?
chamber.
Correct?
The chamber that airway
it's
is
gonna-
helping to
you know,
ventilate is this one up here, where this orange light is
gosh,
shining. Now,
get
folks,
me
it
deep
doesn't
in
matter
here.
if there are 10 active deep anthracite coal mines still operating. They are much like what we're standing in right now, although they are quite a bit smaller. But we also have 23 operating surface stripping operations. These are the large pits where they do mine everything down from the surface. One, as you're all leaving today, is directly across the street from us through that line of trees. They are mining coal there right now as I'm giving you folks this tour, even taking the same veins I've just showed you, including just their other side. Anthracite coal today does still have a value. In fact, for the first time in 45 years, chances are around here it is cheaper to heat your home with anthracite coal versus oil or natural gas. We have the cheap fuel for home heating, at least in our immediate area. That is one of the things keeping the industry going among anthracite's more modern industrial uses, which is the big driver today. So folks, are there any questions here before we do, of course, start our way back down to our ride?
How do they name the veins?
They're named after people, places, and things. So you're talking about coal company officials, locations, physical characteristics of the vein itself, like the Mammoth is very thick. There's a vein called the 7-foot, it averages 7 feet thick. The Holmes vein is named after, I'm trying to think of his name, Joseph Holmes. He founded the Holmes Safety Association. So
And the primroses are still around?
what's that?
Primroses are still
They are.
around?
Yeah.
What about he has a horse carrying with his wagon that has with tons of logs?
Well, they'd be moving through here as well. And tons of timber work done in the mine. You'd have the mules be as your main transportation system down here years ago before we had the electric mine locomotives. Folks, we'll start our way down. Yes,
I
ma'am.
have one question. If a miner did not survive his shift,
Yeah.
how is he brought back to the surface?
He'd be thrown on a flat car, a small flat car or a converted coal car, taken outside, and then put in a company hearse. Every coal company had one called a black Mariah, a simple black wagon. Taken to the miner's home, dropped on the porch. It'd be up to the family to then deal with that. 2 days later, a company official is going to come to the house, say, do you have anybody to work? If you say no, you're out of the house that day.
How do earthquakes affect it?
It's actually very geologically stable here. Even though the coal is very hard, it is still softer than the surrounding rock, with multiple intermittent layers between solid rock and coal going down into the depths of the basin. It actually looks like a shock absorber. So it's not, it doesn't horribly shake around too much here. Folks, we're going to start our way down. I will be your driver. Again, I do hope you enjoyed it. And we are loading up the cars like when we came down, folks.
Right ahead, Zack. All right. And we were back into the yellow train.
Put in my jacket.
So what we're going to, we're going to cave out, and then Zack, we're going to ride back.
Hey, check it out.
Good luck.
Record you guys.
All right, we just made it. We want to name Zack the toy guide. And we just wait. Okay. You know, hear about rattling. And for this tour, write down comments below. And just give it a hit thumbs up, and then subscribe to my channel, and then click the bell icon for notifications. And I hope you guys enjoy.